Hi everyone, it's Carrie here from Artist Strong, and you are watching another How to Be an Artist Creator profile. And I'm really happy today to have artist Gwenn Seemel here. I have followed Gwenn for so long, I don't even really remember when or how we connected. She is a full-time artist. She has beautiful, beautiful work. I love the style of her work. You definitely need to check it out. I'll make sure you have the links to her website below when we're done with this chat today. She's an advocate for artists. She has wonderful background and experience that she's dedicated a lot of time towards understanding copyright and helping others understand copyright, which we're going to talk about today. And she actually has a project right now too. It's a hashtag called Fix Redbubble. That's all about how institutions are actually abusing the understanding that people have around copyright, and we're going to get into that too. So thank you, Gwenn, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am happy to have you. It's awesome. This is going to be a great conversation, and I know people are going to take a lot away from this. So before we dig into all the copyright, can you tell us how you came to realize your interest in the arts?
So I could tell the story I always tell from when I was 6 and my older brother complimented my drawing, and then I was like, yay, compliments about my art. And, it's a good story and stuff. But I was thinking about it, and I think that if I think about like the moment when I became more of a professional, like more of a thoughtful sort of process into it, it was right as I was finishing up my undergraduate degree. I have a BA in studio art and French. And I wanted to launch a career. I wanted to be an artist. That's what I wanted to do. And I realized that I needed to figure out my why. Why am I doing this? And I had noticed that I felt like people were not really connecting with art, not like I was. I was like, I want everybody to feel these feelings that I feel for art. And I was doing exclusively portraiture at that point. And I was like, well, what better way to make people feel connected to art than to put them in the art? So I decided that I was going to paint every single person's portrait, one face at a time. And that was the moment when I was like, I know what I'm about. Obviously, that's shifted over the years as I do other things besides portraits, but I'm making art matter. That's what I was doing.
That's what we're all about here at Artist Strong too.
Yeah.
So I think everyone here will resonate with that. How your style is so unique, and if I see something online, I know it's yours even if I don't see the text in a post. So how do you feel you came to this style and voice that you have?
So I blame my mom. She signed me up for an intaglio printmaking class when I was like 14 or 15. So that's making prints using metal plates. And to create a tonal area in intaglio printmaking, you usually use cross-hatching. And at 14, 15, I didn't have a style. I didn't even really know how to draw, so I go into this class with some experience, but mostly without having like formed my way of communicating. And cross-hatching just became like embedded in my being. And then when I started painting, I just started using those sort of overlapping marks, and with different brushes, wider brushes and smaller brushes, you get this sort of variety. It's interesting, that you say that it's recognizable. And I do feel like there is a uniqueness to it, but I should also say that, so I was like in high school when I developed this sort of way of painting. In college, I spent a semester in Paris, and I went to the Centre Pompidou, which is their modern art museum. And I came across a painting by Picasso. Now, Picasso has a lot of different styles that he's worked on, and one of the sort of side styles he went into for just a couple of paintings was to do like an engraving with those like very specific contoured lines, like you see like on portraits for like on money, for example, American money.
Yeah.
Those very specific kinds of lines. He was doing them in color. He was making a painting, and it was like he took printmaking and put it into painting, and it was like I'm like Picasso. So I had this moment of like I am at once like original because I did come up with this and not.
Yeah. And that's one reason I love the conversations you do have around copyright, because I think so many people feel like to have a voice as a maker, it somehow means you have to do something completely different than everyone else. And yet that ignores the fact that all the things we learn, all the things we consume influence the work that we are putting to paper or canvas or whatever medium we work in. So can you tell us a little bit about, I guess I'm not sure where I want to start with copyright. Why don't we talk about your personal term that you have on your website of how you have uncopyrighted your part?
So I use the term uncopyright because it pleases me, but the true legal term is that I place my art in the public domain. So that means that if you come across any of my images online or wherever you come across them, you are free to use them in any way for any reason without asking for permission first. And I didn't come to that place right away, but that's where I'm at and where I intend to stay, and I see myself in the future. My journey to get there started right at the beginning because, like I said, I was doing mostly portraits. And when you do a portrait, the artwork belongs to you because you've created this piece. It wouldn't exist without you as the artist. But it also belongs to the subject because it wouldn't exist without their whole life and their face and everything that they've done to be who they are. And so from the very beginning, I had this like pull of like this, I don't know if I want to put the copyright C on my work. It feels disrespectful to the subjects. Mm-hmm. And from there, I sort of expanded it like, well, I don't just use people's faces. I look at other artists' work as well, and I want to value that. And so it started my process of opening up. And there were a couple of influential pieces of media that I encountered in like the mid 2000s that helped me that I would like to recommend to your audience. Sure. There's a book called Free Culture by Lawrence Lessig. He is, at the time, he's a lawyer, and at the time he was very focused on freeing up creativity and questioning copyright. Now he's moved on to other work where he wants elections to be fair. And he's worked on that for years, like since I think like 2011 or 12 or something. But he's a fascinating character, amazing writer, amazing guy. So Free Culture is his book. And then there's a documentary called RIP, a Remix Manifesto. And Lessig appears in that movie. So there's just a bunch of luminaries from the uncopywriting or free culture movement, however you want to put it. And it just gives you a perspective of another way of thinking. And that's the thing that I want to emphasize with my uncopywriting. If you'd talked to me like a couple years ago, I'd have been like, everyone must do exactly like me. Like I was in that place with my activism where I was like, this is the truth. I have discovered it. Now I must share it. And now I've realized like people are going to have different journeys with it, and that's good. All that I care about actually is that artists learn about copyright instead of being afraid of it. Yes. If you then choose to embrace it, cool, that's you. But just please learn about it instead of like hiding from it.
Yeah. I've had several artists, especially early on with Artist Strong, that where I'd be interviewing or reaching out to people for even just a written interview at that point. Mm-hmm. I wasn't doing these video conversations yet. Yeah. And I had several artists be like, I'm concerned about copyright issues and I won't share them online or anywhere. So I'm happy to talk to you, but you'll have no images of my art for your interview. And I'm like,
wild, isn't it?
I can't do that. I'm sorry. That's not going to engage my community, and they want to see the work. Yeah. And that's what makes me sad about it is I see lots of artists stopping themselves from putting themselves out there to do the things they really feel called to do as an artist, because what if someone steals their work?
Yeah. And you know, spoiler alert, it's going to be stolen if it's any good. Exactly. It's going to, and even like if you don't put it online, it's going to be stolen. People are going to take, and we all do it. We all do it. And I think that's something that we could all do better at actually is, even if it's just to ourselves or and to our friends, citing our sources. Acknowledging instead of like denying, oh, I never ever look at anybody else's work, like to really be like, no, I do. And this part of this painting, you know, comes from this inspiration. I think that would be a beautiful place to start for anybody who's interested in creativity and in copyright, is to start like, you know, like academics do with papers. They cite their sources. So maybe just do it for yourself, because it'll really unlock your creativity too, as you start to like trace the lineage of your artworks.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking about. In a program I have called The Circle, I have artists look at the artists they're influenced by, and then look at those artists' influences and kind of exactly trace that lineage. And that's what happens, right? It actually helps you be more informed in your work and make more conscious decisions as a creator. Yeah, full on. Amen.
So true. So good.
What do you think is the biggest misconception artists have around copyright?
I'd have to say that it's that they think it's going to help them make a living. Mm-hmm. I think there is a tiny minority of artists that it may play in their ability to make money. So I'm not going to say that it never does. But I think way more artists think it's going to help them than actually does. And I think that actually stems from a misconception or even a lie that we've been told about how artists make a living. We've been told that the art business is like any other business, you know, like you're like just a manufacturer. You make a thing and you sell it. But like, I don't see people who own factories and are manufacturing tchotchkes. Like, I don't see them caring about their gadgets as much as we do. Like, it doesn't come from their blood, sweat, and tears like our art does. So this whole lie that we should just be like a manufacturer has really infected, I think, the way that a lot of artists view making a living with their art, and made it doesn't feel right on some level. And so when they hear people saying you should just be like a manufacturer and be so cold about it and be so separate from it, or so, you know, pragmatic, maybe not cold, but pragmatic about it, it doesn't feel right. And so people are like, I don't even want to go in the money direction because it doesn't make sense.
It's
icky. Degrading. Yeah. And if we could just acknowledge, like, that's not how the art business works, period, I think we'd all do a lot better. The way that artists have always made a living, and every artist, including the ones who can use copyright and have it help them, they are still, the way that they're living, like where their earnings, what it relies on is their connection with their audience. So art is a medium between you and your audience. And sometimes people will come through the medium and reach out to you and email you or find you at an opening and talk to you. But even if they don't do that, they are still connecting with you through the work. And those connections come from a basic human need, a need to feel like we're understood, like people get where we're coming from, that something about our story is normal, is shared. Mm-hmm. And those connections then inspire people to want to support you to make more art. And that support can come in obvious ways, like they buy that artwork that they like, or they buy a reproduction of it, or they give to crowdfunding, whatever it is, however they are going through those connections to help you make money. It's through those connections that they're doing it. And so artists, I think, when they're trying to make a living or when they're just trying to make their art, should focus on those connections. Really connecting with your audience is what counts.
Yeah, it's all about relationship building. And that's the funny thing, because I do get so many emails from people being like, well, how do I sell my art? Or how do I get started? I set up an Etsy shop and nothing's happened. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what have you been doing to make relationships with the people interested in your work? And usually there's not many answers that
because it's scary. It's scary to say, like, look, I did a thing and I love it, and I want you to love it too. Like, that's terrifying. Yeah. We are so brave, and I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for how brave artists are. It's hard.
Yeah, because as you say, it is this personal extension of us putting this work out there. And in some ways, I argue, like, once we put our art online, even if we don't want feedback, we're kind of asking for it in some way, because that's part of engaging in this conversation and starting that relationship with people. And that is really a vulnerable experience.
But I think it's useful to separate feedback that's about the person who's giving you the feedback and feedback that's actually about you, because most feedback is more about the person who's giving it to you. They want to express something about themselves. And so to really be able to separate it out and be like, okay, they're having their journey. It really has nothing to do with me. I can choose to listen or not.
Exactly.
You know, I think that's important.
Yeah. And the more we can kind of give ourselves space to see it, to take time to reflect on those and differentiate between the two, and also honor just the fact that it is a vulnerable experience, the easier I think it becomes, because you kind of grow it's not like you grow a thicker skin, but I feel like you just know this is part of the process. Yeah. And in some ways it becomes more rewarding because of that risk.
I think that's true, but I'm not going to lie. It is pretty raw. Like, even 16 years into my career, I still do things where I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to die, you know, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's the feeling that, you know, you're growing. And
exactly. Yeah. Why don't you tell us about your hashtag Fix Redbubble? How did that get started, and kind of what's going on with it right now?
Okay, so it's been bubbling up in my mind for a while, and there were two main inspirations for why it actually happened. So first, the obvious inspiration is that Redbubble and other print-on-demand sites, they don't view artists as their partners. They view us as some like weird kind of second-tier customer that they have to deal with, because otherwise they don't have any content on their site. But we don't actually give them money. So they don't care about us in the way that they care about the people who are purchasing prints of our work. And this is a problem for print on demand. It's a problem for sites like Patreon and Kickstarter, any site that basically uses your creativity to make you money, but also to give them a cut. And so this is an inequality that exists and is a problem across all of these platforms. With Redbubble specifically, they have a habit that they are amping up of deleting artists' work and giving the creator very little explanation for why the artwork is being taken down. Usually there's a suggestion that it's somehow infringing on someone else's copyright. If you're lucky, they'll name who it is that they are saying that you are infringing upon, like whose rights you are infringing upon. Just giving weird reasons that don't make sense. And it's all very legal. They also say in their email to you, that you may see other work that seems to also be violating the same thing, and pretty much tough and, just deal with it. And I was tired of it because it felt, well, first of all, they targeted a piece of political art that I was like, no, not in this climate. You are not taking down my political art for a spurious takedown notice that you received. So that was like the main impetus. And then I also realized I am good at advocating for myself, and I'm good at advocating for artists, but sort of by myself. What I am not good at is banding together with other artists. And so in the last couple of months, I've actually been working on a separate project, completely separate project with the directors of Jobs with Justice. Jobs with Justice is a network of unions in the United States, and it basically helps unions organize better. And these directors, who are both women of color, wanted to write a book that was about how workers in the US are in large part women of color. We have this idea that unions are made up of white men, but there's a lot of women and women of color and people of color in these unions. So they wanted to write about those stories. And so they commissioned me to paint portraits of the people they were writing about in their book. And so I was being really exposed to a lot of like good organizing juice. And I was like, this is what artists need. Let's do this, Yeah. And then the thing happened where Redbubble took down one of my political pieces, and I was like, this is the last straw. But I don't want to do it by myself. I can't do it by myself. They won't listen to me. And so I created this hashtag as a way of encouraging other artists to share works that were taken down also by Redbubble for copyright reasons, for weird reasons, like supposedly a portrait of Anne Frank that's very respectful of her is somehow violating their terms of use in terms of like it has to do with the Holocaust and it might offend someone. I don't think that a painting of a hero would offend people.
Right.
So people started sharing, and it was a way of not being alone in this, and of suddenly forcing Redbubble to recognize that we are not just second-tier customers. If you're not going to treat us like partners, you have to at least treat us like the first-tier customers that we are. You don't exist without us. Our content is your business model. At this point, the hashtag has stalled a bit. I'm having trouble getting people to share because it's scary. You're worried that Redbubble is going to take down more of your work. You're worried that your sales on Redbubble will go down. Mine have since I started criticizing the platform. And that's just because my audience is like receiving two messages from me. On the one, I'm like, please buy and support and enjoy. And on the other hand, I'm saying, this company is kind of poo-poo, Right. So it is scary to share this and to do that. So I get it. I'm still working my contacts in the free culture world, people who are interested in copyright and copyright problems, and telling them about this. So I expect to get some more noise made about it and hopefully get more people talking. I also have a interview set up with a Redbubble employee.
Great.
So they do surveys on a regular basis, and I've participated in their surveys on multiple occasions, and they reached out to me recently, and I have no idea if it's because they recognize that I've started this hashtag. I know they know about it because I posted it on their site, on my journal on their site. But I intend to let them know how I feel, and not just me, and I want this change to be made. I'm not trying to sink Redbubble, or any print-on-demand site. I want them to do it better because I do think they provide a valuable source of income for many artists. I just think they could do it better.
Exactly. And why wouldn't more companies that do benefit from the work and profit of artists' labor not include them in conversations and decisions about how they run their company?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that as these companies get bigger, they seem to lose sight of the importance of artists.
Yeah.
And I think they're also pressured by companies. Redbubble specifically is a target on a lot of licensing forums.
Yeah.
where licensing companies get together, the people who manage the rights for others, and are like, Redbubble is stealing from us by allowing these artists to do this thing. So they're worried about being sued by bigger companies.
Right.
And I get that, you know, and I'm not going to sue them. I'm not going to get together with my artist friends and sue them. So they feel like they can just do anything, but they can't. They can't.
Right. And part of this too is some of the arguments for the copyright that they're suggesting isn't even accurate. Can you give an example of that?
So what happens is either a licensing company or a rights owner sends them a blanket sort of, you have stuff on your site that's problematic, that we view as problematic. And then Redbubble's like, okay. And what they usually do, at least from my understanding of it, is they search tags. Tags is how your stuff is found on Redbubble and on most print-on-demand sites. So even if you, for example, have your given name as your shop name, and people search, like, for example, Gwenn Seemel, they won't find it unless I've put Gwenn Seemel in the tags of every single piece I upload. So tags are super powerful, but they can also bite you if the site then decides to go after anything with, for example, Hello Kitty in the tags. So the piece that was removed that really made me want to, like, the political piece had a reference to Hello Kitty in it. I used Hello Kitty as a starting point to make a political point, and altered it significantly, and made commentary, and did all the things that were necessary for it to qualify under fair use. But all that they saw is that when they searched Hello Kitty, this piece came up, and so they just deleted it and let me know that Sanrio, which is the rights owner, didn't want me to have this. And it's not just that they don't have a good reason, they haven't actually looked at the piece carefully to decide if it really needs to be taken down. It's also that they are not receiving takedowns specific to my work. It's a blanket kind of a situation. That's a problem, because in California anyway, copyright law has been shown, like has been used, like there has been a decision made that spurious takedown notices are not okay. So takedown notices that are just meant to scare people, just meant to basically quash creativity, are not okay and will not be upheld. And you'll actually be penalized, you know, small amounts of money for these companies, but you'll actually be penalized if you try to scare people with a DMCA takedown notice. So there is sort of legal precedent for Fix Redbubble saying, like, hey, you got to show us the paper trail, and then we get to evaluate whether or not it's spurious, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really, I would just love an appeals process. I don't see why that's not, if they're going to continue to take down stuff in a blanket manner, if an individual wants to take it up and feels strongly enough about it, they should have a human being that they can talk to about it. And at this point, it is very difficult to get an actual human being to respond to you when you've had an artwork deleted. And that is extremely frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about fair use? I don't know how many people in my community really fully understand that term.
Okay, so copyright law allows you, like your copyright on an image, allows you to control multiple uses of that image. That includes commercial use, it includes derivative works made from that, but also just general like displaying of your work. Like technically, no one should be like grabbing an image off your site and putting it on Facebook, for example, to share it. Even if they put your name on it, they're not supposed to do that without asking you permission first. Copyright technically requires every single use, even something as benign and wonderful as that, you have to ask permission first. So that's what copyright allows you to control. Fair use is a limitation on copyright's power. It basically says like, oh, we get that this whole thing of having to ask permission for every single little thing is going to gum up creativity, and we don't like that. So we're going to create this limitation that will allow for certain uses. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what fair use is. On the Redbubble site, there's a couple of copyright warriors, as I call them, who like to tell me what's what because they really disagree with my stuff. And they are all spreading this lie about fair use, that fair use can never include a commercial use. You're never allowed to make money off of something that you've created referencing someone else's work. This is not true. It's murky how you're allowed to make money, and you may have to go to court to defend it, but fair use does not prohibit commercial gain from the piece that you've made. Right. Fair use generally is applied to things like in a school situation, an education situation, yeah, you're allowed to make photocopies of an article in order to give it to your students, that sort of a thing. But it can be used by artists as well, and it can be a powerful tool, especially if we don't allow companies like Redbubble to get away with weakening fair use. That's
Right.
also part of the problem. The bigger picture is that they're taking away this limitation that we all use. I mean, we all benefit from having fair use on the books, and as something that we can, benefit from. So.
Yeah. Something specifically around fair use that I see the community dealing with here is a lot of people, especially when they're new, a lot of people here are kind of newer or returning to their art interest. And so they might be working from photo references as a way to help them warm up and build their skill again. Mm-hmm. And what I try to explain to them is you can draw from any photo at any point and copy it, as long as it's practice and art study and you don't plan to sell it. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to sell that image, then you would need to change it dramatically in some way to make it more your own. It doesn't mean that you couldn't work from that photo reference, but you would have to deviate from it enough. And of course, that enough is the gray murky area. Yeah. But that's part of fair use. That's why you can work from celebrity images of faces, mm-hmm. and you can make reference to Hello Kitty, mm-hmm. and all of these other things in our culture. But we have to be conscious about how we're manipulating and working from that image to really say something new and different, or to parody it, or
and parody is a good example. I think that it gets really murky, and you do sort of worry about whether or not it's going to be okay. But if there's some kind of commentary element involved, if you're not just using it as a reference, but you're using it as a reference in a piece that makes a commentary about the thing, the subject of the image, or about some aspect of society, that commentary is viewed by this fair use restriction on copyright as valuable. So don't maybe think of it in terms of like, what can I say with my art? Instead of just doing a study, what can I say?
Right. And that there's always a good time to do studies, but don't feel then obliged to try to sell it.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that it's a study, and keep it in your studio.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit here. We're wrapping up. Do you have any art projects in the works? Are you working on that Union series?
No, so I just finished it. I'm doing my happy dance of finishing. There's 11 paintings, so they're all done now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. My current excitement is that I decided to start a sticker club on my Patreon page. Oh. So it's the first time I'm offering physical rewards that happen every month. And the reason why I wanted to do it is because I feel like times are hard. And our screens are the source often of a lot of negativity and just bad news. And I wanted something that was off screen, and something that was a bit of pretty that, could really stick to you like a sticker. So that's why I started the sticker club. So I'm pretty obsessed with that right now. That's definitely my big fun thing. I'm planning ahead what stickers I want to offer. And I know that's maybe more marketing than an art project, but I view my marketing as art. It's definitely totally a part of it. It's a storytelling around my work that is, storytelling is art too.
Absolutely. As are stickers.
Yes, right?
So guys, we have one more question for Gwenn, but before we go there, I'd love you guys to take a minute here and think about kind of the conversation we've had today. Has something triggered something in you? Or have you really seen copyright or conversations around art and voice in a new perspective? And if you have, comment below and tell us your takeaway. We'll keep the conversation going. I think it's really important to have these conversations and deal with difficult topics like copyright and fix Redbubble, because if we want to have more influence in our culture and really take ownership of the art, I think we need to step up and take a lead like this. So comment below and tell us kind of your take on things, or if you have a question. And Gwenn, before I ask the last question, just want to thank you so much for being here and for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us. It's very, very valued.
Thank you for giving me the space to talk about copyright and creativity. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Great. We'll make sure that all the links to everything Gwenn talked about, and I'll get the books below, the book and the documentary written below too, once this video is done. So wrapping things up, what does it mean to you, Gwenn, to be an artist?
We are the future makers. Without us, society cannot imagine where to go, who to be. So I would love to be able to communicate to every artist who struggles with putting their voice out there, like, you're needed. Please, we want a future, and you're making it for us.
Beautifully said. Thank you guys for watching another episode of How to Be an Artist Creator Profile. I hope you guys will join us for another one. And don't forget to add those comments below and tell us your big takeaway from today. Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.